Selfie Sports Talk. I'm John Vogel, I'm your host. Today, we're going to talk about the playoff, the national championship game that will be played today in Atlanta, Georgia, between Alabama and Georgia. Welcome to episode 4. I hope you've enjoyed the previous week that we put out for you all. And the Facebook page now has 20 likes. I think that's a good start. So anyways, let's get down to business. Georgia and Alabama. This has been a big rivalry for years and years and years. And there was a time when these teams were ranked 2 and 3 heading into a national championship game, playing each other in the SEC game championship. And it was an intense game, and Georgia almost won. But it was a bonehead move by the receiver and the quarterback throwing before the end zone with no timeouts. Got tackled to the 4-yard line as time expired. So these teams have a history of playing against each other and competing against each other at a very high level. So this is going to make it an even more interesting matchup. So we're going to break down the keys to each side a little bit and talk about who needs to step up and who needs to really play. Georgia's key number 1 is Jake Fromm. Jake Fromm is a true freshman, 18 years old. He might be 19 now, I'm not sure. But the point is, he's a true freshman, and yet again we have a true freshman leading their team to a national playoff. But here's the difference between this year's Fromm and last year's Alabama's Jalen Hurts. Fromm is an actual thrower. He can throw the football. He's good at it. He makes really great throws. He makes great reads. He's looking like he's going to play for a long time on Sundays after he finishes up here at Georgia. And he's pretty much solidified the job. He's really had an outstanding season. And then to step up against Oklahoma and play the way he did last week to get his team here was huge. We expected Georgia to come out there and run with the football and just pound, and they came out throwing instead and showed that Fromm has developed so much over this year that he can throw. Now he's going to be facing a much better defense. The Oklahoma defense wasn't in the top 50 defenses when they played them. Alabama is a top 5 defense. So we'll see how Fromm adjusts to it, if he still plays well with that. So that's going to be a huge key here because Fromm really has shown a lot of potential. The next key for Georgia is Nick Chubb and Sony Michel. Now, these two running backs have carried the team pretty much the entire year. And last week, when they started throwing the football and they opened the game throwing the football, it opened the run game up for them even more, and they just exploded. They both had well over 150 yards rushing and multiple touchdowns. And they gashed Oklahoma big time. And it really showed that Georgia had a lot of power in the run game still, but they had completely opened the playbook up and was letting Fromm just throw the football around at will, and that helped them to make the next step up take the run game to a whole new level. And it's going to be interesting to see if they can do this against an Alabama defense. Now, Alabama's run defense all year has been stifling. So if they want to step up and if they want to win this game, these running backs are going to have to really, really play well. They can't have a little bit of an off game. It's got to be A games for both of them to really get at Alabama. And that's the only way they're going to do it. If they don't, it's going to be a long night for Georgia. The third key is Georgia's defense. Georgia's defense is right up there with Alabama. It's a top 5 defense, and it has been all year. It's been outstanding. It's shut out several opponents. It's going to be really interesting to see how their defense plays against Alabama's offense. And I've talked about this before. I just feel like Alabama's offense is being held back by Jalen Hurts. They could be so much more explosive, and they could score so many points if they had Tua playing quarterback. Now, this is going to be interesting to see if Alabama's offense is going to be able to move the ball against that Georgia defense, because they swarm to the ball. They pass rush really well. Their safeties are playing lights out. So it's going to be up to Alabama's offense really to step up and really come after this defense. And if they don't, it's going to be a long day for their offense as well. Now, Alabama, as I was just mentioned about their offense, has struggled all year on offense. They've struggled to put up a lot of points against quality opponents. They scored 14 against Auburn, 31 the week before, or I think it was 24, and there was a defensive touchdown against Mississippi State. There's so much talent there with somebody like Jalen Hurts and Calvin Ridley. Now, Hurts does have one thing that is very rare in a quarterback, and it's his ability to stay calm, conduct the game around him, and get out of jams. And he does that very well. Now, probably better than anybody I've ever seen, and that's including Baker Mayfield, who I love his escapability. But Hurts has something magical about him, that's for sure. Now, if he can find Calvin Ridley and he can get Ridley involved more in the game, this game is going to break open, and this offense is going to break open. We've seen him hit Ridley on a few balls this year going deep, because Ridley, he's an outstanding route runner, has great speed. He's going to be a top 10 pick for sure in the NFL draft this year, with somebody looking to upgrade the receiving corps. And Ridley really, really brings something explosive to the table for them. Now, if Hurts can utilize that today, if he can find Ridley deep, if he can get the ball to him, it can really break the game wide open. Now, the next key is Alabama's defense. Alabama's defense, as I mentioned before, is a top 5 defense. It's high caliber. When I broke down the preview for last week's playoff, I mentioned 7 different players on that defense could be taken in the first 2 days of the NFL draft this year. And that's if several of them declare early. Now, their safeties are incredible. The entire secondary's been playing lights out. You have a defensive line that's really great, and the linebackers are a little bit beat up. There's going to be missing a couple key guys. Sean Dion Hamilton should be missing, for example. But they've brought the boom. Even the backups are stepping up. It's the Alabama system rotating in, and it's going to be interesting to see how their defense can attack Georgia's offense. If they can get the pressure that they need on Fromm, we might find ourselves in a defensive slugfest tonight. The third key is Alabama's run game. Now, Georgia has played really well against the run all year, except for last week against Baker Mayfield, when they gave up a lot of big runs that you're not accustomed to seeing Georgia give up against an Oklahoma spread. So it's going to be interesting to really get an idea for what what's going to be accomplished with the Alabama run game against this Georgia defense, because if there was a weakness on Georgia last week, it was their run defense. The prediction for tonight. I really think this is going to be a defensive slugfest the first half. Don't be surprised if there's double zeros at the end of the first 2 quarters. When they come back out on the field in the third, Alabama's going to score first. Georgia's going to come right back. And you're going to start to think maybe we have a shootout, and it's going to slow down again. And when the fourth quarter comes along, it's going to be whoever hasn't turned the ball over yet. They're going to win the game. I think it's going to be Georgia. I'm going to take Georgia in this one, 13-7. So, thank you for tuning in and watching. Continue to subscribe and like. Tomorrow, we're going to break down this game a little bit. And we will catch you later. Peace out. We're great.